Hey guys, welcome back to Legal Skills Jazz Hands Day. Uh, Hope you're all doing well, and that you're meeting with your mentors. Um, I've heard great things from your mentors. A couple people weren't getting back to them, so I sent the blast message just because, as a reminder, these folks are the ones who make the engine run. They're more or less volunteering for this. Sure, they get a credit in most cases, but really they're doing it out of kindness for you and for the school and the program. They are amazing. I admire their commitment to this, and I just want them to be treated well. So I sent out the email. I'm not a yeller, but I wanted to at least send that out and let you know. Let me talk first about questions that you sent. And I will make this a segment as part of the intro lecture every week. If I have a little more time, I may create a fancy intro with like the Alan Parsons Project music, the pump up, walk up music for stadiums, and maybe my dogs and kids will be part of the splash intro. I don't know yet. I have a long way to go before getting to that point. But regardless of the presentation and production, I'm going to answer your questions every week in the intro lecture from here on out when they arise. And here are a couple that arose. The other thing I should say is, look, if you have questions, just mail me. I spend a lot of time with my kids and dogs, and it's nice receiving emails from you. So, yeah, I look forward to it. It'd be great. So, the first question I got last week was, should I paraphrase the rules that I put into my outline? So, say restatement says something that is not particularly well phrased. Frankly, that's common for some restatements. Then I want to rephrase it into something a bit more coherent, something I'll be able to remember more easily. There's three things I think I would say to this question. One is that generally in law, the exact phrasing of the rule can make a world of difference. So, as you know, terms within rules may need to be defined. And if you paraphrase that word out of the rule, and there are points attached to that word that needed to be defined, you obviously won't get them because you have a rule that doesn't have that word in it. You'd avoid that problem by just using the rule, as awful as it might be, from the restatement or wherever you're getting it. So, second point on that is that you have to worry about whether or not your professor would think that okay. So I would definitely ask your professor, or ask Professor Kravitz, for example, whether or not the rephrasing if he wants you to know the rules verbatim or if rephrasing is okay. Third point is, if you absolutely, after everything I've said today, and the things your professor will probably say, which is memorize the rule verbatim, still want to paraphrase, what I would do is if you're dead set on that approach, paraphrase and run that past your professor. Because every time you paraphrase, you're making cuts, right? You're making cuts about things you don't like, things you do like. You have to know whether that cut was appropriate, and you don't know how to determine that yet. You don't know what the questions are going to be like on an exam. Your professor does. They will tell you if that's a good or bad paraphrase, but I think generally they're just going to want you to memorize however the source of rules states the rule. That's probably what you'll have to end up memorizing. And remember, you do the memorization stuff by forced recall. I do bar support too, and bar prep support, and I told, like, many of the bar preppers that I have weren't in legal skills. At least not all of them were. But I tell them to do forced recall all the time, because it works. It really does. So go back to that tool. Second question I got was, hey, what about alternative forms for an outline? I studied for a different exam. Patent bar was this specific question, and I studied for the patent bar, but while I had the same kind of material you have in the outlines, I organized it differently in a sort of hierarchical way, still within a spreadsheet. And I had different sheets for different topics, and then within each sheet I had an outline with spaces for the elements I had to know, and that way I quizzed myself. Here's what I'll say to this. I have different feelings about this. Generally, what I say is go with the normal law school outline format, just like a normal table of contents format. That will reinforce the relation between different aspects of the law when you do it, because you'll see the defenses lining up and why they line up in torts. When you're looking at breach and contracts, you'll understand how these different factors tie together a little more, of how you assess breach and whether it's material. You'll see how they all play together in an outline format. That you may be able to do that with the spreadsheet. I don't know, because I don't use it, and I don't know really what it'll look like at the end of the day for contracts or torts or property or Civ Pro. But I do know that outlines in a normal structure work. That all being said, keep in mind that studying, if directed towards the same goals, the methods, I won't say don't matter, they do, but there are different, there's different ways to accomplish the same end. And that might work for you. If you do pursue an alternative form for an outline, and don't go too far to the extreme. Like if you have a bunch of pets and you say, I just shave all my intentional torts into my really big dog, and the defenses are on one side and the intentional torts are on the other. And I bet I could do that with my dog because he's pretty dumb. But, don't go too extreme down that road. But if you're just using an alternative outline form, okay, if it works for you, use it, but be very aware when you do so to look out for either conceptual errors in the outline or difficulties in answering a question because of the structure, or getting answers wrong because of the structure. Alternative outlines can work, but forms can work, but the myriad ways in which they could fail, I'm unfamiliar with because I don't know the vehicle. You, who are using the vehicle of an alternative outline, have an incumbent upon you to be on the lookout for difficulties and to switch when those difficulties arise to a more traditional format. I mean, you could probably, there may be studies out there, of which I'm unaware right now, about using alternative forms. But, with what I know learning can be very individualized for sure, but you have to be aware of what your goals are here and make sure that the outline is still achieving those goals. And on that point, the other detriment to using an alternative outline format is that if your professor permits you to have an outline in the exam, you obviously won't be able to have an interactive spreadsheet or whatever it might be available to you. You may be able to take a 10-page outline into the exam, for example. Well, at that instance, you're going to want a traditionally formatted law school outline because that's what your professor will be expecting you to use. And, I don't know the format of exams yet, but, if it's home, your computer could be locked during exams, but for the program you use to take the exams, that's often what happens. So really, regardless if it's in person, online, whatever it might be, you may not have access to that electronic document or electronic tool that you use to generate the outline. For that reason, again, I think the default should be using a normal format outline. Anything else? Mail me. Love to answer and talk about these things. Oh, I also cut my beard. Yay. Speaking of yay, you are about a quarter of the way through the first semester in the middle of a pandemic. and a lot of other stuff going on. You should be proud. So congratulate yourselves. You're the first law school class to start in the middle of a pandemic for a very long time. So the challenges you're facing are novel and different. Of course, if they're novel, they're different by definition. So look, you have these novel challenges in front of you, and you're rising up to take them on. And everything I've heard from your professors, and we do talk, you are all doing quite well. You're engaging with the material and with each other. So great job. Awesome. Let's take a step forward now. It's funny how professors always let me take a step back. Nobody says, let us take a step forward. But I'm going to try it out. I think it feels pretty good. Let us take a step forward into this week's material. Before we do that, let me take a step back. Remember, legal skills is a supplement to your other classes. It's a supplement in that we are talking in this class about how to perform in those classes. We aren't studying doctrinal law. It's a skills class, skills. And for that reason, we cover some things very rudimentarily, if that's a word. We definitely cover simple things, but recognize the value in doing so. Look, I know you know how to make a schedule. I know you do. But what you needed to do is think about the challenges of scheduling in a different kind of academic format when you have so much more going on. So we covered scheduling, not so much for the output per se, but it's the process of you understanding what's going on with your timing so that you don't overdraw from that bank of time that you have. Similarly with a lot of topics, what we're doing is we're setting the table for you to do well. And we do those basic scheduling things first so that you have, don't have to devote a lot of attention to it while you're getting your feet wet and oriented in your other classes. Now we're going to be stepping towards the real goal of the class, one of the real goals of the class, one of the main goals of the class, which is to teach you how to write exam answers in an appropriate format so that your professors will be happy to read them. If they're happy to read them, you'll get a better score. That's just how things go. So, particularly reading these kinds of things, namely exam answers, remember, your professor has hundreds of these to read. Hi, Kieran. That's my son, Kieran. Hold on, bub. Sorry, I had to take a break there. My son walked in, he's 5, and he walked into the room in his underwear because it's Sunday and he isn't clothed. Whatever, it's a pandemic, we all deal with things. And asked me if I wanted to play. And while I do want to play with monster trucks again, like I have several thousand times during the pandemic, I didn't think it appropriate to have the conversation here, so I stopped that. Anyway, this week is another step along that path towards feeling comfortable in an exam and answering exam questions. And the way we're going to do it, and just to sort of paint the trajectory we're going on here, is that we're going to have, we're going to start by looking at rules, which is today's lecture. And the rules will be basic things. It's not something you have to put on an exam. Instead, it's something that it's helpful to be aware of as you're constructing your exam answers. It just gives you something to fall back to look at based on what, if you get stuck in an exam, it's easy to panic, right? Because, oh my God, the time's running. I don't know what to do. I don't have any idea what to do with this answer. Help, right? So in those times, what I do is I do breathing exercises, right? The 8 in, 4 out stuff, which I'll talk about in a later lecture. But also, if you have basic practices to which you can return and just use them and it'll drain your emotion, it will put you in good stead for those times when things get rough. So this is one of those lectures. Just like a lot of other things, you practice it at the beginning, it becomes second nature to think about these things, and then at the at the end of the day, it will just become inherent in how you approach legal problems. So today we're just going to be talking about rules, and rules that you're already reading about and that you will be using on exams. So I'll catch you in the follow-up. Bye.